Alright, so we are live and we're going to wait for some people to hop on. I just figured I'd do a little video today just to kind of give me some motivation to work on some of these designs I've been doing. I've been pretty busy and wanted to show you guys the website a little bit just so you'll come check it out. But let's get some people on here and we'll give it a minute. What I'm going to be working on today is this design. So this is kind of what the customer sent over, and what he wants to do is 6 sundown U15s. Give me some dimensions, tell me what vehicle it's going in, and I kind of know how these work. I've been doing designs for Suburbans quite a bit lately. I did a couple for the Tahoes too, and they're somewhat similar. So I have a good idea of kind of how I want to do the layout. It's in line with what he wanted anyway, so what he wants to do is basically subs up, port to the back, so facing the barn doors, depending on what year. Suburban, I think the 04, it might not be the barn doors, but they're pretty close. Let's look it up. Yeah, so this is like the ones I've been working on. Yeah, they're not the barn doors. They're the, looks like just the regular pull-up, but anyway, got some comments already, so I'll try to keep up with you guys on that. But if you guys are just getting in, we're going to start a design, and I wanted to go live, so I got some motivation to kind of get it done. I've been getting tons of designs lately, and I can't keep up with the demand very easily. Luckily, we got a 3-day weekend, and I'm actually off this weekend, unlike most of the time. So I wanted to show you guys real quick the website. You can order designs on here. So on the left would be your custom designs. I'm going to raise the price because I need to try to slow down demand somehow. I just got too many. But the good news for everyone is that on the right side, I have an option here, and I'm filling up this library of pre-designed enclosures. So these are ones that I've already done. They'll be kind of generic for your situation, but it's kind of like having a Bobby Gately enclosure where it's like you go buy something that's ready to buy, as long as your subwoofer is going to be close to the specs of that box. Well, for this is going to be the design, so I'm basically updating this library all the time. Let's see, I think I got some of the 12s range. Yeah, so you'll come in here and be like, okay, cool, there's some different boxes. Do any of these fit my, my design criteria, as far as dimensions? I'll give them right here. Give you a little bit of overview of what the box is doing. It might tell you like what sub I designed it for. Like this is for SP412, but I mean 2.15, 2.16 cubes after displacement of a sub that's similar to that will work in this box, and you'll come out tuned pretty close to what it was designed for. So we got that going on. That way you guys, maybe instead of having to go buy a custom design, and wait, because right now the wait time's really long, 3 or 4 weeks even. You might find something in here that will get you by, and the price is way better. It's only going to be $15. All you do is buy it, it'll download to a PDF, and you get to keep it. And so it might be a better solution for those who want to just play around with different stuff a little bit cheaper. So this library is being constantly updated. Again, it's on my website, jeepandbase.com. It's going to be in the description and everything. So just wanted to show you guys that before we kick this thing off. And I want to try to keep up with the comments, but I have to ignore them for a little while so I can at least get some content moving. So let's dive in. If you guys watched my last video, we did a little bit of designing with Torres box calculator. This is what I use for the most part to kind of bounce back and forth my math. Takes a lot of work out of doing it by hand, but I still rely on my experience and kind of the goals of this design that the customer wants to really dictate what the design is going to ultimately be. So I'm not going to be like trying to produce graphs and showing things of like response, because those tend to be a little bit misleading. Once you get the real world situation and actually install something into a vehicle. So for those of you getting on, this is the description of what he wanted. So we're going to be doing a design for 6 Sundown U15s, and I took a screenshot of those specs off their website, and they pretty much recommend what I would recommend. They want a 3 cubic foot enclosure per woofer. So that's going to be volume of the enclosure after your displacement. So that means your enclosure is actually going to be bigger, but once the port is installed and once the woofer is installed, the leftover airspace will end up being 3 cubic foot. So that's pretty much how every single company is going to go by with these specs. They recommend tuning it at 35 hertz. They also claim the FS is 35 hertz, so that makes sense. They want 48 square inches of port area. So that's my good old 16 square inches of port area per cubic foot. So 48 divided by 3 will be 16. So Sundown definitely is going by a lot of the things that I go by when I design these ported enclosures. And then they tell you the sub displacement, so that way you know you got to make your box 0.24 cubic foot larger than this 3.0, so that once the sub's in there, it's going to be 3.0. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm sure a lot of you guys who have designed and done stuff for yourself probably know that. Those who don't, that's maybe why you're going to tune in today. All right, so let's get started. And again, guys, I'll get to the comments in a little bit. I'll take like a break from what we're doing, and that way I can focus better my time. So don't worry, if you want to send anything answered, I'll get to you. So customer said his dimensions: 49 wide, 52 deep, 23 and a quarter tall. This 49 wide is the width of that Tahoe, but typically these sheets of wood are coming at 48 inches wide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cap them out at 48 wide. That way he can pretty much get away without cutting sheets. Depends on what you buy too. Some sheets are a little oversized, so you might get 49 inches depending on the brand and the material. But maybe it's better not to risk having to force him to go find the right wood. So I'm going to start with 48, and we're going to go with that. I usually do that for all my builds. So we got the other 2 dimensions in there. I rounded this down. I mean, the quarter inch is going to be here nor there. And I'm going to start plugging in numbers. So I'm going to make this enclosure 2 layers thick all the way around, and then I'm going to add an extra baffle on the top. So the baffle will be 3, and he wants his subs facing upwards and the port facing backwards, so this should be nice. So I plug this stuff into Torres, and it will get a pretty good ballpark. And now we're going to get the woofer. So like we looked a second ago at the specs, each woofer is 0.24 cubic feet. So I got my calculator in my hands. You guys can't see, but if you take 0.24 times 6, you basically got to have an additional 1.44 cubic feet of enclosure volume to make up for the subwoofer displacement, as long as you're mounting them correctly or regularly with the motors inside the box. So that's where you count for that. And then over here, we're going to be telling it about the port a little bit. Same with this area. And last video, I went to a little bit more depth on what you do with the port here. So it might be easier if I start drawing this out. So if I start a box that's 48 inches wide by 52 deep, right? So we're going to just start with this. I'm not going to end up with this, I don't think. But you have your 3/4 inch sheet of wood that you start your bottom with, let's say. And I might give you guys some more tips in this video if you want them on the SketchUp. I brought it up last time, and I thought about doing a dedicated video. It's not really complicated, but it's nice for people that don't know. So if you want to leave in the comments, like you want to learn a bit more about SketchUp, then I'll show you. But anyway, so let's pretend this is the bottom of his box. I think the dimensions may change once we get the design finished, but I wanted to demonstrate what I do with the port here. So let's just put a height in the box. So let's call it 15 inches. This is not what it's going to be. So I'm going to draw up my, actually, let's do it this way. I'm going to draw my sides first. So I'm going to do 15-inch tall sides for just a moment, just so we can demonstrate. And take me a second to draw this. Okay, so you see what I do here is I know I want the port facing back, and I like to use the sides of the enclosure as a portion of the port. I see people like cut ports out of the middle, different things. If you do it this way, typically it'll be the best use of port or box volume, because you're actually like double using the wood that is the box to build the port, instead of like adding a bunch of wood inside to actually, you know, create a port, if that makes any sense. But so I do it like this, right? And so you got to measure the inner dimensions here. So it's going to be 45 inches of port width for a 48-inch wide box. So I'm going to start with that. And I just drew it to demonstrate that. I could do that stuff in my head, but I wanted to show you that, you know, I'm counting the area between sides. And he wanted it tuned around 32 to 34 hertz. Sundown's 35 hertz. I think I would do around 34, 35 hertz. He said he wanted it a little bit peakier for loudness, so I'm going to lean a little high for his recommendation. So we'll go with 34 hertz tuning. So let's start with a length of about 30 inches of port, and we'll set a height of like 5 inches tall, kind of see where the port area coming out. Right now our net volume is a little big and our port area is a little small. And if we remember, the Sundown U15s wanted 3 cubic foot each. If we're doing 6 of them, we're going to be 18 cubic feet. So I want to try to hover around this number. So it's a good volume. But I need a little bit more port area, so it's going to start eating that volume up. And gotta remember, this is very important with Torres, is this right here. The number of common port walls, I forgot until just now, but what I was explaining here was like how we're utilizing the sides of the enclosure and the bottom to create the port, and then like so the front would be going across and you'd have like this open port space, you know, so pretend the front's right here. Right, so this is your slot port at the bottom. Well, you're utilizing the side, bottom, and side. So you basically get to tell Torres like, hey, I'm using 3 sides of the enclosure to do this. And that helps it calculate correctly. So you can't forget that. So right now, looks like the port's a little small. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it 6 inches tall. And we're getting into a pretty good range. The box is getting a little small. But luckily, we're tuned a little lower than we want. So I'm going to shorten this port up. Let's try 26. That's still short. But basically, you play a little bit of juggling with these numbers. And you basically work on adjusting the port area, which is your height and width, versus your port length. And just keep tabs on the volume here. Right now, we're getting a little big. So 6.5 tall. Still a little big, so maybe 2.5. So that's getting pretty good. Still tuned a little low for what we're going to go for. So let's try a little shorter port. Go down to 20. So we keep juggling around the numbers until we get where we like it. And notice the box getting big because it turns out I don't need a lot of port for tuning a bit higher. So I'm gaining all this volume back. But let me refine the port a little more. And what we can do is we'll shorten the box. Let's make this 22 tall. All right, now we're down to 18 cubes. We're at 35 hertz on the dot, but we're a little big on port area. So maybe what I'll do is I'll add some length back to the port, tune it down a little bit. Maybe make the port area a little smaller. and that gets us pretty good. So we're near 16 square inches of port area per cube, and we're also pretty good on tuning, and we're right on the dot with the volume. So I could continue playing with that to kind of get this a little closer for the port area. I mean, that's going to be pretty close. One number I'm not really happy with is the support ratio number, which is basically the height to width. And so this is the debate I start to have with myself. Like, basically, I'd have to do a whole video explaining this, but let's go with what I got. So this is the size of the port. Let's go with the actual box height. So if this box is actually going to be 22, I'm going to raise my sides up now that I know what I'm doing. And I'll get to your guys' comments here in a minute, and we'll catch up. So this will be, well, I did it wrong. I'm going to have 3 baffles, so it's going to be something like this. All right, so then you guys will see in a second how this comes out. I already get this stuff in my head usually, so I kind of know where I'm going, but so I'm going to lower my sides down to make them the correct height, because I set my baffle on top of the sides. All right, so pretend that's my baffle. That's going to be my baffle, and we'll draw the front out. Sometimes it, there we go. Okay, so there's the front. All right, for now. And it should be double thick, but we're not there yet. So that's what the port's going to look like, right? 6 1/4 tall by 45 wide. But it is kind of like skinny in a sense. And I guess what the problem is with that is these port ratios. So that's basically the ratio of height to width. So the higher this ratio is, kind of the worse it is. And they tell you that about 1 to 9 is becoming the limit of that. You don't really want to go past that ratio because it can make port noise and stuff. I'm not super worried about it on this size of a build because it's so big and loud. You're not going to hear every nuance of the port unless you're at super low volumes. But at low volumes, it's tons of a big port. It's plenty big of a port. So there's a few things you can do to counteract that. Number one is go slightly up in port area. So if I wanted to, I could like maximize port area a little bit, and this would work. And you know, but I'm kind of like eating into my box volume a little bit, so I got to kind of play around with that. But it's getting a little bit too much port area, and that causes issues with response and stuff. But we're not too far off. It's not like the end of the world. So I could start doing like, I could do smaller increments. Like instead of like a 1/4 inch at a time, I could try 1/8 inch at a time. So like, if I did like 3/8 of an inch, it'd be 0.375. That gets you pretty good on port area. My box volume is close, and my frequency is close. And again, I could buy some volume if I wanted to really add these little increments, right? So I could make this really difficult for someone to build by getting too specific. But like this would be a pretty good balance right here. This is like almost perfect on all the numbers. But he's got to literally sit there and cut everything at 1/8 inch precision. But I mean, I guess it can be done. But I typically like to round this stuff off But in this case, it's kind of looking like this gets you really nice numbers. So I'm gonna go with this for a second, and I might just end up rounding this back down because it doesn't really change anything. And again, knowing Torres, once you design this thing, get this thing drawn out in SketchUp and like verify the volumes like I like to do, and I'll show you guys again on how, you'll find that Torres didn't give you the correct dimensions for everything usually. It gets you close. What Torres does do is get you the correct tunings as long as you get perfectly the volume and the port that you see in these dark boxes. So that's why you basically, it's kind of a loop where you start out with Torres, you get pretty close on the numbers, then you draw it out in SketchUp, and then verify all those numbers, and then kind of like plug them back over to Torres and like see if that works, or if you actually need to make adjustments to the model to kind of match Torres, as far as volume goes. So it's kind of like a loop. A lot of people ignore doing that, and like they end up with a little bit off on their design, and it's not Torres' fault. I think someone in the last video said something about that, and they basically were like, well, did the thing with Torres get fixed? And I don't think there was ever a thing wrong with Torres that I know of, at least not these newer versions. I think it was just the way that people have been inputting their information and expecting that Torres can account for every single situation. It gets tripped up a lot with L ports and stuff. So like if you got a port that's turning in the box, then it usually doesn't see that, and it accounts for the volume differently because it assumes like the port's just going straight through the box usually. But let me get to your comments real quick. Looks like we got a bunch. I'll bring this over. So this is my YouTube thing, so I can like see all that's going on. And I know there's more people watching right now, so I don't know why it doesn't update this stuff. Okay, it's updated right here. So I only got 18 people, that's fine. It's because I don't get on YouTube enough. I don't think everybody's watching very often anymore. But I'm trying. I've been super busy, so it's been hard to keep up and get videos out. But the Jeep is slowly coming along. I get 2 days to work on it this weekend, so we'll definitely get a video coming out in the next week. So let's look at this. Everyone's saying, hey, what's up? Saying it's a little quiet. Turn up your speakers, maybe? I don't know. I just got a new headset, so let me know what you guys think. If I do need to turn it up, it looks like maybe it has some options for that. I can't tell. On my end, it looks like it's doing okay because this app tells me kind of like how loud it's getting, and it looks like it's in a decent range. I don't know. Anyway, okay, we got 2 people asking that, so let's see how it can do that. I don't know if that's any louder. Does that help? I don't know. That might be all that I can turn it up. I don't know. This is my first time using the headset that I got. But maybe you guys just got to turn up on your end. If not, then I'll have to address that at some point. What kind of batteries am I running? I don't know yet. I'm looking at lithium, so that's coming up at some point in the video. Man, you guys can barely hear me. Man, you guys need some like speakers. It's definitely on my end, but man, I don't know how I can get more volume out of this. Let's see. I don't know. Like I said, this new headset, so hopefully you guys can hear me. If not, then man, everyone's saying that. Okay. I gotta figure out how to set the mic gain. It's not really self-explanatory. Well, let's see if I can try something. Give me 1 second. Okay, I don't know if that's any louder or not. It doesn't really look like it is. Let me know. What I did was there's like a little cushion thing that goes over the mic for, like, I guess when you're breathing. I just took that off, and maybe it's a little louder now. I'll wait for you guys to let me know. So let me know if it's any louder now, whoever is in the comments. But I'm going to keep going for those that can hear me. I apologize. Like I said, new headset, so it was loud enough on my end, but maybe you guys don't have enough volume or something. But let's see what's going on here. We're designing an enclosure. Yeah, so someone did ask about port ratio. Yeah, you usually want to keep it low. And I can do a lot of explanation for that, the whole video. I did post on like a Facebook post the other day about some math behind port ratio and why the port ratio is important. But we might have to do a video. But yeah, you want lower port ratio. So you said it's no change. Man, I don't know what the heck is up with that. So you guys can't hear me. I don't know why this one is so hard to hear. And I got my voice up too. I mean, so I don't know what's going on with that. I don't know if there's like a... Wonder if this does anything. What if we give you 5 dB? Alright, let me know if that changed anything. I don't know. So is it any louder now that I just put 5 dB on the setting, or does the setting not do anything? Yeah, so that's what I'm wondering, is maybe I do need to be in the amber scale. Does this make any difference? I don't know. Because I think this is like input. Oh no, it looks like it's up higher now. So I gave you guys 10 dB. What's that about? Does it do anything on your end? So it looks like it's getting me closer to this amber scale. Okay, so it is helping. Okay, so should I do better than 10 dB, or is that going to be enough? Because I don't know if like it's just amplifying the crap out of me and then making it, you know, like poor quality. Where was I just at? All right, I'm gonna give you 15 dB. You guys are all 15 dB now. Let's see. Let's get me pretty close. Okay, sweet. Now I feel good now. Thanks, guys. So if you guys think the 15 dB is enough, confirm, and I could leave it there, or I can do more. And it still sounds pretty clear? Okay. And you guys are awesome. Thanks for hanging in with me on that one. So if you need any more volume, let me know. 15 dB seems to be working for everyone. Yeah, it's the phone users I think are the problem, because on my PC I couldn't tell. Okay, so if you need any more volume, let me know. I think that's going to work. I'll keep that in mind. Hopefully that setting is saved. So, all right, anyway, let's get some stuff out of the way, and we'll get back to the design now that we got that problem figured out. Just technical stuff that I haven't been... this is my second live feed on the computer, and I tried a totally different headset, and I like it a lot more, but I guess it needs a little boosting. So anyway, I wanted to do a shout out to the Third Era. I think that's how... I don't know how you're pronouncing it, ERA, but thanks for the super chat, showing some love. Yeah, have some fun, man. I don't know if you're still on here, but Thank you, very much appreciated. The super chats basically go directly to my my YouTube income every month, which is very little. It's probably like $80 a month at this point, and I could get that up a little more if I was uploading, but YouTube's been pretty rough on the creators, and we're not doing as well as we were. So it's been kind of hard to have motivation to post. But anyway, that's stuff you guys don't need to care about. But let's see. Would a DC 9K do 0? I don't know. Would it do 0? Is there more to this message than I didn't see? Okay, so we're getting through the stupid mic com. Oh, here's the rest of the messages. 0.5 ohm. Yeah, 9K is fine at 0.5 with good electrical. Definitely gonna want some voltage for the 9K. I believe the 9Ks are designed for like 16 volt systems, so you'd be charging around 18 volts, and you usually don't want to dip too much back down to 16. If you're still on a 12 volt system, then you would definitely want to charge as high as you can, 15 volts as high as you usually can. And if you're dipping down below 15 too far, then you're not feeding that amp. But yeah, it should be solid at 0.5. I would say don't strap it if you had 2 of them though. So, okay, you got the bass buds, that's cool. Okay, so I know about port ratio is important, but frequency and port size. So that's kind of what I'm trying to explain a little bit about this frequency and port size. Hopefully I can convey that maybe with a bit more of the video. We can go over that. Okay, so everyone's happy with the audio. Cool, cool, cool. Fuck, you're loud. Turn it down, man. I know, you're kidding. All right, let's go back to what we're doing. Sorry about the volume issue we just had, but it sounds like we're back on track. So we're back to work on this design, and for those of you who didn't see, this is kind of where our specs are. So what I was kind of going over was hashing out like how specific I want to go with these measurements, because it's like, is that really going to be fun to build? Like cutting everything at 3/8 of an inch and 1/8 of an inch. It depends on like how skilled the person is on building. And typically what I try to do with my design is make it as simple as possible. So you have to weigh out those options. But if I round this stuff back down to make it more simplistic, a 1/4 inch seems to be a good place to round. Gosh, I can't type. There we go. 1/4 inch, rounded inch. Our numbers are pretty dang close. Pretty dang close. So that could work. But yeah, it's kind of a debate. But what I think I'll do is I'm going to leave these all kind of rounded right now, because like I explained earlier, once you transfer all this stuff out of Torres and kind of into an actual model, you'll notice that things won't be perfectly accurate, and that might end up being the rounding you needed or whatever, and then you adjust. But so let's go ahead and design. So I'm going to move this window over, and so here's the box again, and I'm going to double check that my dimensions make sense. So it should be a total of 22 high, 50 or 48 wide, and 52 deep, right? Get rid of these. Yeah. So SketchUp's a little finicky sometimes, because you'll end up like selecting stuff you don't want to select. But what I like to do is I'll make object or groups of things, so you actually get like a solid piece. So you'll select it and you'll make it a group, and now it's kind of one big chunk that comes, hangs out together, and then you can edit them and like, tweak whatever's going on. And if you're not doing the groups, then you basically, it comprises everything of these little lines, and the lines will do weird things like all this stuff, and you don't want to be moving around independently because they like drag the other ones around. But as soon as you put them into a group, then now it's like, well, there's obviously a piece hanging out here. Once you put it in a group, it's a nice big piece that it's not, changing shape, and it's really easy to grab and move and snap back into place. So everything I do is I put them into groups. And then they also has a feature to put it into a component, and I think that's just so you can name it, and it might give it some extra properties, but I never really use it. So now I got these pieces, and you can copy and paste. So I'll do my double layer front, right, and it's going to go back in here, right. So this is my port opening, like we were talking about, and now I'm going to draw some baffles out. So get rid of the extras here. Actually, put the back on right now. So basically, you draw out your rectangle, right? You connect all four sides, and it becomes a face. Then you can take this drag tool, just drag the face out 3/4 of an inch, and now you have your piece. But like I said, you gotta select that piece and make it a group. You'll notice another thing that just happened is when you make everything into little groups, then you can actually just go and select like that, and it's only selecting everything that wasn't a group if you're doing it one at a time. So it didn't like select a bunch of lines in this piece, because this piece is now its own thing. So it's not like you're going to grab a bunch of random lines. But like my baffle I haven't made into a group yet, so like I could grab it and other things, and it's hard to sort stuff out that way. You can see you'll also sometimes find hidden line work that you don't need, so you have to like kind of keep track with this software of like keeping everything clean so you can make nice components. Okay, so since everything else is a group, I can make this little thing a group and edit the group, and I can also drag it out like that, right? So you guys, I suggest finding the software and downloading it and playing around with it, because it's kind of fun once you get the hang of it. Alright, so that's the gist of our box, right? 3 baffles, everything else is double layered, got a port. So now that I got it drawn out, let's I'm going to actually pull the sides off so I can see in it. Okay, we'll set them to the side, and see, there's things hanging around sometimes. It's like delete extra little stuff. There. So I'm keeping everything clean. All my little groups are clean. They're no extra line work in them. Let me check on this. Okay. Haven't gotten too many new comments, so that's good. Okay, so now we're going to draw our port depth, and like we were talking about over in Torres, I've been playing with that. Right now I got it set at 20 inches long. So that's the total port, so I'm going to call it from the front of the box inward. So I'm going to go 20 inches, right? And then I'm going to actually make my pieces, so it'll be a piece like that. And I double it up so it's nice and strong. And that reminded me, Torres also wants to know about port thickness, so I might actually need to adjust my volume again, because I forgot to say that I'm going to do 1.5 inch thick port thickness. So that might be another way for me to get this to round up. I'll look at that. So I can do a 1/4 inch and get pretty close. So if I did a 1/2 inch, that's about perfect. My port volume's a little bit low again, or port area. So like I said, guys, you just got to keep doing the balancing act with it. Like this might work out, but we could do that like 3/8 again. That's pretty dang close. It's pretty nice. So I might go with that. That's fairly rounded off. The port and it's 3/8 of an inch, which isn't super rounded, but I mean, if you got your saw out and you're being precise, you could cut that. It really does make the difference getting that precision on the ports usually. So I think we'll go ahead and check the model, but I'm gonna go with that. Like I was saying earlier, I like to round my numbers off for someone who's building this to keep it as simple as possible, but not every situation gives you that. So this is the gist of the box, right? The other thing we're gonna have to take into account is fitting all the woofers on here. So 615s, the layout might be tight. We also keep in mind the depth of the woofer. You know, is it going to hit this port? I don't think that's going to be a problem yet, but I'm going to do that very next. But right before that, I would like to kind of just get a check on the ballpark of my enclosure volume. So what I can do is, if everything is in groups, right, like we've been making all these pieces, the nice thing about, put another baffle or another back on it. The nice thing about these models is you can really verify precisely the volume of the enclosure by doing a few ways. You usually have this little task window right here. It's going to have information. So that's kind of useful, and I could basically, if I have a group of something that's got no like extra line work in it, it's just a really clean shape. SketchUp is smart enough to come up with the volume of that piece. And right now it's telling me in square inches because it just, or cubic inches, which is just kind of like the setting of the software. You can adjust that, but I use inches a lot for the dimensions, so it naturally wants to do dimensions as far as volume. And then there's a conversion to get the cubic feet. But what's handy is like you can make objects in groups and it'll tell you the volumes of those. So that's one way. So like you could technically like make a group of something that fit inside this box perfectly, and like that would be a volume. Or another way I do it is I'll make a two-dimensional thing that's like the outline of the box, and you'll see this kind of dark face in there. And you can get your surface area of that, but since the software is a little finicky, you do have to like drag this out a little bit, just a little ways, to get it off of like this face of this other piece. For some reason, the software, see, it'll let you know the square inches if you use a tag on the piece. But for some reason, the software, if you don't drag it away from this other piece, it's going to like, it actually adds up the area of this entire big chunk. And it doesn't subtract out like this area you didn't want. So you kind of have to like separate what you just drew to kind of get an accurate measurement out here. So basically what it's saying is like this whole little chunk that you see my mouse going around is 750.8 or 750.9 square inches. So on my calculator, I'm going to put that in. So 750.9. And now I'm just going to multiply it by the width of the inside of the box, which we knew is 45 inches. So I get a pretty big number. And that's basically my volume in cubic inches, which is 33,790, just so you can follow along. And you can divide that by 1728, and that will convert it into cubic feet. So what my calculator tells me is that based on that, right now, with nothing in the box other than this port, it's 19.5 cubic feet. And we remember the subs were about 1.44 cubic feet of displacement altogether. So it gets us down to 18.11 cubic feet. And what I want to illustrate is that Torres told us it was going to be 18.03. So it's about 0.08 off, which is kind of nominal, but that is a bit of volume. So like what you can do also with Torres is you can make the adjustments to kind of like make it identical to your model if you want, and you can count it as like negative bracing, so it'll actually like add volume. So now we're at 18.11 like my calculation said. And then you can say like, okay, well, it didn't really change much, or it did change something, and I want to either adjust for that in the model, or I want to just leave it alone here in Torres. I think what I'm going to try to do is, since I could shrink the box slightly, it would be nice to shrink the box. So I want like positive bracing a little bit, just to get this down to like 18 on the dot would be pretty nice, because it's helping my port area get almost to 16, and I'm exactly 18 cubic feet, exactly 34 hertz. So I basically need to get it from, I need to take up 0.11 cubic feet to get it to this 18. Hopefully you guys can see what I'm trying to say. Maybe if I had the calculator up, I can show you the math. So I'll go through it one more time really quickly. That way everyone can see what my numbers are looking like. So like we were looking at, I was taking the two-dimensional area of this side, right? And I drug it out so that the software could give me a correct area of just the area in the box that I want to account for. You don't want to include the port as part of your box volume, because that's port. So we have 750 square inches, so it's going to be 750.9. We'll round that up to 0.9. This two-dimensional area times the width will be a three-dimensional volume, and we know it's 45 inches. Oops. So that's the width of the box. And this gives you a volume. So this is the volume of the enclosure in cubic inches. And if you divide it by 1728, you got cubic feet, 19.55. And like we said earlier, the subs, like I have noted in Torres, altogether take up 1.44. So we're going to take this minus 1.44. That's where I get my 18.11. So it's 18.11 cubic feet. I would like to get it down to exactly 18. So I need to take off 0.11. Torres came up with 18.03. So that's kind of showing the discrepancy between Torres and my actual model. So that's why I really want to show you guys that sometimes can be really big. This time it was kind of small. And like I said, you could put negative bracing to get this number to match your calc. And if you're happy with that, go for it. If you're not happy with that, then you can adjust bracing and readjust your model to go match that. And what I'd like to do with this model is I'm going to get this out of the way, so they'll go away. I like putting in these boxes, I like a 45 on this rear bottom corner. It seems to help a lot with these kind of elongated boxes that have the bottom port. And so I could kind of use that to take up that little bit of room. So I could do one that's like 3 inches, right? So it's going to be like that. And then I can go perpendicular to that line at 3/4 of an inch. And then there's some nice tools that allow us to draw nice things. If you play with the software, you'll learn when you can use these things. Alright, so cleaning up my model. That's my little 45. We're going to make it a group. We're going to edit the group and drag it out all the way. And you got a little nice little 45. And this kind of helps roll things out of the box so you don't get like standing waves in here. And you can get a little gain sometimes. And let's verify the volume of this. So maybe it's not enough, or maybe it's too much, but we can do some math again. So I'm going to write down that right now my enclosure is, after sub displacement, let's see, I got a pad here. After displacement is 18.11 cubic feet. I like to get 0.1 to go away, 0.11 to go away. And if we have a 45 that is 3 inches by 3 inches, it's a triangle, right? I'm going to divide it by 2. So the two-dimensional area of this triangle right here is 4.5 inches, just like my calculator has. And now we're going to multiply that by 45 inches, which is the width of the box, or the length of this 45. And this is our volume in cubic inches. Again, we're going to divide it by 1728. Boom. Like a boss. 0.11, 0.12, same thing. Perfect amount of displacement. So trust me, this wasn't pre-planned. That was just by chance. So we'll go back over to Torres, and I'm going to make sure I get this thing down to, let's see, so 18.11. So yeah, I need to be at, basically the math is saying that if I was at 18.11 minus 0.12, I'll be at 1799. So to correct that in Torres, I'm basically calling it this much bracing. Now I'm at 1799. Perfect tuning, perfect port area, just about. Super happy with that. So I think this is very good working design. But there will be some loopholes coming up on things that we're gonna have to maybe account for. And again, it's going to be another iteration of verifying my volumes and going through it. But technically, this works. But I'll show you guys something that will really make you mad. When you get a design all done, then you realize that the box is bigger than you think. And I ran into this problem a little while back. We did a box for a buddy with 612s. And what happened was, when you do the speaker hole cutouts, right, for a lot of subs, that actually has volume, a negative volume, or, well, it adds to the volume of the box. And I'll show you in a second. So I wanted to check the sundown specs. We know the, let's see, the cutout is going to be 14 inches in diameter. So I'm going to draw a 14-inch circle. Just verify. Yeah, 14 inches. Make it a group. And I actually like to put a line through it. So I have a center point that you can snap to. I can move it around by its center. Oh yeah, and then typically a 15-inch woofer is about 15.5 inches in diameter, like with the gasket and everything. Right? Let's see. So what I like to do is I actually like to put both the cutout and the overall dimension. Actually, let me check that sundown, what sundown says. Where is it? Oh, sundown. Okay, yeah, it's a little bigger than 15.5. So you know what I'll do is I'll play it safe, and I'll actually draw a circle that's 15.75 inch. That way, you can place all the stubs to where they're not going to touch each other, you know, so when you actually build the box, you don't run into the issue of like, oh man, my subs don't actually fit. So now we have a fake sub representation of one, and it looks like these will lay out no problem. So what I kind of do is I'll set them off to the edges, kind of put them next to each other to get me started. So I'm thinking how I want to do it. So what I like to do is I like to give them some space, you know, so there's wood between them, right? It's going to be a little stronger, but we don't have quite enough width. So going 3 wide might not be the best layout, but we got plenty of room, it looks like, so I can play around with it. We can do something really cool for him. It's kind of going to be up to what we end up finding here. But let's think. How do I want to do this? So part of this is I typically like the subs being in the rear end of the box, farthest away from the port opening. That helps kind of have them utilize the box and kind of develop wave lengths in the box, if that makes any sense. Kind of want to keep port and sub separated. It's kind of just a thing that I do. So I do want to kind of have them in the back half of the box, if I can. But I'm trying to think of a good way to lay these out, and I think I have an idea. And you got to remember that the box has kind of got thickness to it. So if I set my subs directly on the edges, obviously not going to work because they're going to be intersecting like the side. So I'm not going to keep them on the edges. But for now, just to get me something started, I think what I'll do is I'll set each one in the thickness of the box. So it's 1.5 inches. Right? So like they're pretty much in the corners, and I could drag this one out, something like that. And we could do something like this. That looks pretty cool to me. And I got the majority of the subs kind of in the back and the fewer amount kind of up forward. It should be okay. So that's one option for a layout, and it looks really cool to me. Maybe you guys can get in the comments and let me know. I haven't seen a comment for a bit actually, so go ahead and comment if you think this layout looks pretty cool. Kind of like the staggered look. Now they'll all physically fit like that. But I think I'm gonna go with it. So let's cut these out of my baffle now. So I'm gonna go edit group, and we're gonna go to the cutout diameter. All these. And then you get this tool and you can like set them down. And if you set them down to the bottom of the baffle or 3/4 inches, basically it cuts it all out. Like as if you're really cutting it out in real life. Close the group, get rid of these circles, and bam, you got some holes. So that's gonna be kind of cool, I think. I'll check the comment here in a second. Looks like you guys are saying stuff. But I'm gonna duplicate this. Now we're gonna have 3 thick. Damn. That's cool. What do you guys think? Let's go look at the comments. Yep, so you guys are thinking that's cool. So I think that looks good. I think it's functional. So now for the pitfalls. Gotta check some things. This is another thing that people forget about and makes or breaks your design. So first thing is first, you want to look at the spec of your subwoofer and you want to know about the mounting depth. Looks like they gave it right here, basically 9 inches, 905. That's basically going to be the dimension from where you mount the sub. So like the top of this baffle down. And you want to check, and I know I'm good, but I want to check that you have ample room. So I'm going to call it 10 inches. That way the bottom of the sub is not running into this port. Seen people have that problem before, and it's super annoying. These have tons of room, so we're fine in that front. So that's something you definitely want to check. That's why I make these videos, to kind of help you guys remember that. Then you can see like the layout inside. So there's that. I left enough meat in between each sub that the baffle is going to be plenty thick for them, and we'll add some bracing. So yeah, so that's a gist of a design, but this is definitely something Let's see. Got some comments talking about port area again. Need to learn SketchUp. Port area is actually based on the maximum displacement of the driver or drivers to achieve a target velocity at full power. Yes, but you don't always have to go for a target, in my opinion. Like, you don't necessarily need to be at low velocity or high velocity, but you do want to avoid a high velocity usually. In my mind, the importance of the port area is more to do with, I'm trying to think how to word it. It's to do with the response of the enclosure. So sometimes you'll get enclosures that will have way too much port area, because someone was too invested in trying to get the velocity low because they were worried about port noise. But the response of the woofer becomes really sloppy, because there's like a large delay usually between like what the woofer's doing and what the port's doing, and you kind of get really, it doesn't sound clean. It sounds kind of muddy and sloppy with you have big ports like that. And there's videos on there talking about that if you look through YouTube. And if you're too small in port area, then you get the chafing and really high velocity. So that's where you do pay attention to velocity. But basically at 16 square inches per cubic foot, it's pretty much, if you go anywhere on the internet to anyone who knows what they're talking about, that's pretty much the target decided number that is going to get you 99% of the time to a good place that has both decently low velocity and actually enough port area to actually work, and not chafe. I'm trying to like word this, but I was watching some stuff a few weeks ago on it that kind of confirmed all the stuff that I've always had in my head. And in real world experience, I've discovered that too is getting these you get better bandwidth with the bigger port up until the point where then it stops working and you just get the super muddy sound. The small ports are nice, tight sounding. You'll see them for like home theater systems. Usually they're really small, but the only way you can get away with small port, even with the higher velocity, is you got to have huge roundovers. So that's why people like kerf their boxes. And a lot of these designs don't have enough room, and people building them don't usually have enough tools and ability to actually make big, large roundovers to avoid the chafing. And what it's kind of attributed to is it's like fluid dynamics or fluid mechanics, where like they basically looking at flows coming in and out of a pipe or any trapezoidal shape, and air is technically a fluid. So when it exits from one area to the next, so you're basically expanding volume really quickly, you create turbulence right outside that transition point, which is what you end up hearing. So it's that chuffing sound, or the port noise that people will talk about, is because basically of these really sharp transitions into big open volumes of air, and all that turbulence just hangs out. It just gets stuck here, and so basically you're having sound and waves coming through getting torn up as they come out, and so with a bigger port you have less of that, because basically air can kind of ride along these edges of the port, kind of hang out, and air slips on air really easily versus air slipping on surfaces. So the bigger the port you get, the more of like a cushion you develop around the perimeter of the port for air. So all the air in the center of the port that's exiting is actually moving faster than the air on the edges. So you kind of eliminate a lot of that turbulence, because you still have turbulence at the exits, so you do want to round them, but you've eliminated a lot of the friction and turbulence by just sheer area, because you're transitioning something bigger into something that's already big versus something that's really small into something big. So it's kind of like a slip. It slips on itself. So that's kind of one thing that happens. And another thing would be, where was it going with the thought? The way that like home theater systems will get away with small ports that are tuned really low is because they have really aggressive transitions. because if you have a big round here, basically then it's slipping out into open space and not having an area to build turbulence at the corner. You probably have to see more visual stuff on it, but I'm sure a lot of you guys probably even know more than me. But it's like the K factor or whatever, and you could actually look it up. If you think about water and fluids, air will be the same thing, but let's think the K factor. Let's see if there's a good image of this. I have to take more time to search for it to get a better image. I'm getting off on a tangent right now, so hopefully you guys are still watching. This is kind of some of the stuff you end up thinking about. There's no real good let's see. Here we go. So this is an image demonstrating that. And in fluids, they call it's a head loss sometimes too, because you're basically have a friction going on with that. But this is showing fluid as it enters in from a larger space to a smaller space. So these K values, basically you want a lower K value, which is going to transition nicely. This image doesn't really show, it perfectly, but because it doesn't really like show any of the turbulence. Maybe there's a better image, but you can see like this one's showing like this style pipe is really bad. It's just squared off, ends that stick out of, this surface, which would be like maybe the front of your box. It kind of creates turbulence coming in the port. Like this rounded one, nice. This big rounded one's really nice. Square one's okay. There's got to be some better images. Google's failing us today, but anyway, you guys could do some more research on this on your own. But yeah, they chalk them up with minor losses. Fluids is really interesting stuff. I enjoyed learning about it, but here, this image right here actually shows the turbulence, but I need to zoom in on it. This is what I'm talking about. So this has even got a round over and it still has a little bit of turbulence in this image. But this is what I'm talking about, is if it's completely square, this is really bad. And this is just air going in the wrong direction, getting stuck here. Then it interacts with the air trying to come in and out of the port, and they're going in different directions and doing different things, and that's where you get this noise, and you lose efficiency, and you have problems. And the trouble with that is the more that happens, the smaller the port area. So that's why people are trying to get port area up enough that they don't have that issue. But yeah, I mean, it is a combination of what the woofers are doing. But typically, if you're going to build a generic design, 16 square inches per cubic foot takes care of all the problems that you'll really ever find with the port velocity. And I never pay attention to the port velocity because I keep to that standard. I'm never worried about it being too high. I've never had an example of it being too high, and creating all that turbulence and that sound. But I mean, it's the thing. If you get these days, you get these woofers that are such high excursion. Sometimes you do want to give them some more port area, but look, Sundown suggests, and what I suggest, 16 square inches per cubic foot. So 48 divided by 3 is 16. This is for the U15, so they're not super high excursion subs. I actually think if you look at some of their other subs, they upped this a little bit. I think they up it to about 17 square inches per cubic foot because they're making up for the high excursion woofer, which is going to be more port velocity. Anyway, I'm going on too long of a tangent, but we could do more of a video on that at some point, I'm sure. But I mean, it's interesting stuff. So if you guys are interested in what ports are doing, you could look into fluid mechanics and learn a lot. I mean, this is getting technical, so should be able to find airport percent diagram to show the outputs. Yeah, so it's going to be diagrams online. I'm not going to continue looking, but that's why aeroports do really well too, is the flares and their design. And actually, that's a segue into the port ratio thing again. This port ratio, I'm not like super stoked with right here. Where's the Torres? It's what I was talking about, kind of like that boundary layer. I think that word was dropped, and that's true. The boundary layer is kind of like that air that's stuck to the sides of the box and it's moving slower than the air moving through the center of the port. The basically the more air that's having to interact with the surface of box, the worse, because it's friction. And the trouble with high ratio port ratios is, number one, you get a lot of surface area that you have to pass air past. I could do an example back here, but if I had a port, let's say I wanted 100 square inches of port area, I could do either a square port that's 10 by 10, and I posted this on Facebook a while back and got positive responses. Let's say it's like 10 inches deep. All right, so this would be a port. I could also achieve 100 square inches of port area by doing like a 20-inch times 5 inches tall, 20 inches, and we'll put it 10 inches deep. Right, so whatever that's tuned at, no one cares. But these are the same port areas, all right? You can check it, 10 by 10. Obviously, 10 times 10 is 100. And 5 by 20 is 100 as well. So these are exactly the same port area. But there's a key difference between these two things. So this is 1-to-1 ratio, right? Side length is the same as the width, 1-to-1. This one's going to be a 4-to-1 because it's 4 times longer than it is tall. And I'll show you the problem when you get these really, wide, thin ports. Basically, if you look inside the port, this is the surface area that air has to interact with as it passes through. So it's going to have that kind of, I already forgot the word, but someone was talking about it earlier. I forget what it was, but it's that, basically, like I was saying, it's the air that kind of gets stuck to the sides. Well, the more of that, the worse. So if you actually want to do some math, you want to know what the surface area of the inside of the port is. And basically, this one's set up 10 inches deep, 10 inches tall. So this square right here is 100 square inches. This square right here is 100. This square right here is 100, 100. So the interior surface area of the port is 400 square inches. So I'm going to write that right here. 400. This port is higher ratio, and the problem is it's going to actually have more surface area. So this is going to be 20 inches wide by 10 inches deep. So that's 200, 200. The sides are 5 by 10, so that's 50, 50. So 200 plus 200 is 400, 50 plus 50 makes it 500. So the interior surface area of this port is 500 square inches. Same exact port area, same exact tuning, everything except the port ratio is the same. You have 100 extra square inches of surface area for air to interact on. That's the trouble with these high ratio ports. So hopefully that dawned on you guys what that meant. And as a last example real quick, the reason why airports are so good is because they also, why can't I draw? They also have the least amount of surface area inside. So if I quickly go to my Google, can't spell today. I want to double check that I can get 100 square inches of port. I think it's about 5.6 something. About 5.64. Obviously that kind of port doesn't exist, but this is for the math demonstration. So if I do a port that's at the same 100 square inches, diameter is going to be 5.64 inches. We're going to make it 10 inches long. Right? So now we're looking at a port that's 100. Actually, you know what? Did I do that right? Yeah, I did that right. No, that doesn't look like the same thing. What am I doing here? Oh, it's because I put radius. Diameter is going to be double that. Sorry, guys. So 5.64 times 2. Okay. It's an 11-inch port. 11.28. I'm going to draw my circle. 10 inches deep. All right. So all these ports are tuned to the same for the most part. Right? So that's all the same surface area. Why is the circle going to be better? Well, let's look at the circumference. We're going to calculate basically the surface area of the inside of this cylinder. And I can't spell anything. I'm being lazy. So if we put that R value, the radius, it's 5.64. So the circumference is 35.44 inches. So it's like the distance around the circle, which is the same thing as having your sides. And then you can take that and multiply it by the depth. So that's going to be times 10. So basically, yeah, so you have about 355 square inches of surface area on the inside of that port. So that's the least amount of surface area to interact with air out of all these ports, although they're all the same tuning and port area. You can see square port is optimal as far as slot ports go. Round is as optimal as you can get for any shape of port. And then the slot ones start to create problems. So hopefully that was something interesting for you guys. For those of you who just joined, I'm basically explaining that port ratio is important. Round ports are your most efficient because they have the least amount of surface area inside of the port to interact with air that passes through. Square ports are your next best, and these slotted oblong rectangle ports are, the higher the ratio, the worse they get. The higher this number goes as far as the surface area of all the inside pieces. So that's port ratio. Problem with this box is port ratio is a little high. So actually quite a bit of interaction with air. And the only real thing that does is it beats down your efficiency a little bit. So your box won't be as efficient potentially as like one that you could get that was more square. And it also can kind of make it chafe, or the cuffing sound, or like, you know, that port turbulence you hear. You'll hear it if you're playing like a box is too small of a port or something. It could be the right size. It could be that 16 square inches per cubic foot, like I said. Like it could be a good port area, but it's still, if it's too thin, it's going to make noise regardless because there's so much surface interacting with air that it's slowing down the air a lot versus like air that's coming out of the center of the port. I've been talking about that subject too long, but hopefully you guys understand. So we're back to the comments. It didn't look like there was too much. Yeah, so it looks like you guys know where to find it, but I'm not going to continue looking. Dad, is that you? Yes, Luke. You've been a bad Jedi. Star Wars, fun. Although I'm not a huge fan of the new Star Wars. It's not all what it used to be. They ruined it. But anyway, back to box designing. We still got 21 people watching. I'm sad because I used to have so many more people watch back in the day. I used to get like hundreds when I was really active on the channel, but I've been busy the last few years and kind of let the channel go a little bit. So those of you who are still here, appreciate it. But let me think. So I think we were talking about kind of the pitfalls of the design. We checked that the subwoofers would clear the port, and they do. And everything's pretty happy so far. But one thing that really becomes a problem that people do not ever think about for some reason, and I typically ignore on small builds, is the volume of these cutouts. And it adds up. This box is 615s, and it's going to add up to quite a bit of volume. So again, we're going to take the area of the circle, so it's 14 inches in diameter, and I cheat and I just go to Google because my brain's tired and doesn't want to calculate pi r squared, but here's the equation. But it's going to be 7 is my radius. So this is the area of the circle, and that's in square inches. So we're going to calculate it again. So 153.94 square inches. I put 95, it's the same difference. Times the depth of your cutout. So this depth is 2¼ inches times 2.25. That's your volume in cubic inches divided by 1728. Each circle is 0.2 cubes times 6. Boom. 1.2 cubic foot of additional volume in this box that no one would account for. And yes, this woofer goes in this and displaces air, but that displacement they give you online is displacement from the bottom of that subwoofer basket ring, the mounting ring, or surround landing, downward. So technically it does have this space. This space does count. So this box, if someone sent you out this design and didn't check that, basically they'd be sending you a box that was, instead of the recommended 18 cubic foot, it would now be 19.2 cubic feet. So you're actually a lot larger than you thought you were. So this will force me to adjust the design once again. So yippee. But I think I have to keep good track of my numbers because we got this thing adjusted just right. Okay, so this is where I was before I counted in my my circles. I was at perfect 18 cubic foot box, and that would have been great. Maybe on a small box, you wouldn't have to think about the circles. Like if you have a single baffle or even a double, but for like a 10 or a 12, that number is not going to sway much of anything. It's not going to do anything to really change how that box works. But to show you guys once again, because I forgot, what this really does is if you're, 1.2 cubic foot bigger than you thought you were, look at where your tuning goes. Your tuning is moved over a whole hertz away from where you thought it was. Your port area has gone way smaller than you thought it was per cubic foot. So now your velocity might start going up in relations to the box volume. And like someone said earlier, the subwoofers play a big part in the port velocity. But the woofers do have to interact in this volume of space too. So again, that lends itself to, you do want to get this port area per cubic foot to kind of just go along with the volume of the box for the most part. And that's going to get you out of pretty much all situations of having port noise. And then yes, you could run like Basebox Pro and check the stuff out, but if you play with Bassbox Pro, you'll end up finding it's kind of hard to have, problems with the port velocity if you're kind of maintaining this big port. But again, you don't want to go too big because then you get that muddy sound. You can get away with port this small, and you would get away with it, I'm sure, especially with like the Sundown U15s. They're not super high excursion subs. They're not displacing a ton of air, and they're not tuned horribly low. This box won't be tuned that low. So tuning plays a part in it too, because if you're tuned into the dirt like 25 hertz and you're trying to play you're basically asking a woofer to displace tons of air usually at that frequency. Then you might want the port area to be up more, but it's kind of all just trial and error, real world, experience. And again, so if you're designing, and what I do for everyone is shoot for 16 square inches per cubic foot. And you'll see that recommended on Sundown's site. You'll see that recommended just about anywhere you look that has good information. This only applies to ported enclosures though. If you get into fourth orders and sixth orders, this stuff all goes out the window and it changes. But we're focusing on the ported enclosure. I definitely want to remember that since I have this kind of high port ratio, I do want to keep some port area. Want to keep her big, so the 16 square inches is definitely where I want to go, and if I go slightly above that, I am not worried. But at any rate, I keep talking about the port. I need to get more of a video together that really explains this stuff, accurately, all my thoughts on it. But there are videos online, so go ahead and check that stuff out. Okay, we're back to where we were. So this is the last real thing I check is, of course, these circle cutouts and these big designs. Because like we just showed you guys, it really throws things off, especially with as big, as this box is. So now we need to make up for it. So if I'm at 17.99 cubic feet right now, but I got to add on this 1.2 cubic feet of unknown, this stuff that we weren't accounting for, these holes. I got to make an adjustment to my bracing here, and I have to be very careful because I'd like to keep this 0.04 pretty accurate. So I'm actually going to do my 17.99. What the heck am I doing? 17.99 plus the 1.2. So I'm going to adjust this box currently, or right now with his bracing value back up to 19.19 cubic feet in this column right here. So I'm just going to add 1.24. So there we go. Or actually that's wrong. I need to be negative 0.16. I think that's going to get me there. Yeah, so now we plug that into Torres and we're like, cool. So at least we're keeping track of what the circles are doing. Let's make that up by shortening the box again. So I'm going to bring the box down to 20 inches tall. That's too short. 21, 21.5. Okay, so now we're getting this thing back, kind of back where it goes. So now we're a little off again. Like, we're not perfectly 18 cubic feet, but it's not going to be a big deal. It's tight, a little small. I could go a little bigger, but he did say, also, this is another thing you guys got to think about. He said he's going to run 20K watts. I don't know if that's for real or not, but that's what my customer was like, 20K watts. It's a lot of power. I don't even know if, I think that's above like the rated of all those subs combined, but with that, you do want to think about enclosure volume again, because if you're getting too big of a box, then you're going to lose a lot of the power handling with the suspension control and everything. So if you are running that much power, then you could lean a little bit on the small side, and as long as your tuning is cool and your port area is pretty good, then you're going to be fine. So I think I'm not going to cut hairs or split hairs here. We're going to go with the 17.92. That's a nice rounded number here. Port area is perfect. I mean, to me, this design looks like it's balanced out. It's going to work. I've accounted for my subwoofer volume and my adjustments to match my model. So we're going to lower the height of this down to 21.5. So let's do that in the model. So draw my line from the bottom corner. It's going to be 21.5. So we're not really lowering the box much. I gotta think. I don't know. I'm wondering why I don't have to lower it that much. So you gotta keep track of your stuff. You can't just rely on those numbers. You also gotta think about what's happening. So right now it says everything's correct at 21.5. Oh, you know what happened? I think because I adjusted my port thickness halfway through this, it actually needed more volume versus my model. So we should be good. Yeah, that was a long time ago in the video. But anyway, I'm going to go with 21.5. I'm just thinking out loud a little bit too, guys. So if you guys are like missing what I'm referring to, then I apologize. Where's my 20.5? Okay. So this is where the top box needs to be, this line. I'm just going to move everything down to that. Okay. And then technically you got to go through and adjust all my sides one at a time, so it's kind of annoying. But bring all these guys down. And I'm going to take a peek at the comments here in a second. Doesn't look like there's a lot of them, but that's fine. I post these too for like people who want to watch later. So if there's not a lot of people right now, that's fine. I will ask though, if you guys are watching, are you excited to see something with the Jeep, even though I guess I'll announce again that we're not walling the Jeep again? Are you still excited to see anything going on with it, knowing that it's not going to be walled? We're still going to do a really cool system, and I want to do a lift kit, not anything crazy, but I want to clean the Jeep up and kind of retire it from like super hardcore audio. So we're going to do an install that's about kind of what hopefully most of my subscribers would think about having in theirs, something that's not a wall, something that's reasonable. I mean, I have a lot of power I can play with, but so it might be bigger than most of what you guys are playing with most of the time, but maybe it'll be back down on the level of where most of my subscribers are, and give you some ideas and something to aspire to with your builds. I'm thinking 312s and a ported enclosure in the back of my Jeep on 2 or 3 5Ks. I mean, obviously that's bigger than it needs to be, but anyway, if you guys are interested in the Jeep still, that would mean a lot to me, even though we're not doing the huge crazy build anymore. But do not worry, if you like the big crazy builds, we are doing things with the Astra van still, and we're turning it into a demo vehicle. So don't let your heart be troubled, because we will still do some big builds, and I'd like to get a different Jeep at some point and do a crazy wall build. So I mean, it's not like we're done, but for now we're taking a break with my Cherokee and kind of retiring it, because it was my first car, and I'm not quite sold on like destroying it much more with another wall build. And I'll do the video to explain that more. But all right, so I'll check the comments on that. It looks like people love the Jeep regardless of what I do with it, so that means a lot. And we'll get some in-depth nice videos for you guys, and it should be fun. But let's check on their box design real quick. I'm kind of making this hard on myself for the video, just over explaining things, but because I have to add bracing still. So that's going to change things up again, but these adjustments are pretty fast. So, but I'm just demonstrating again. We're going to check the volume. So now we brought down the surface area a little bit. So we're at 721.875 times 45 inches wide. So we're checking the volume again of the inside of the enclosure with my 45 and my port. And it comes out to 18.79. Plus I want to add my circles like we talked about. This is volume that you must account for. And for some reason I didn't write down that volume and I forgot what the heck it was. I think it was 1.2. That's right. Okay. Okay, so we're at 19.99 minus 1.44. 18.55. All right, so now Torres is starting to get really far off with its discrepancy of, versus my model. My math and Torres were saying that we were supposed to be at 1792, but my model is currently at 1855. So we're quite a bit larger than we thought. So again, that's why you got to triple check Torres and all your calcs. So technically my box should be shorter. But like I mentioned, I am going to add some bracing in here. I'm tempted to add bracing in this port, but the trouble with that is it technically makes more surface area for the port to have interaction with air, and it's going to force me to readjust my port, and I don't really think it's going to need a lot of bracing in the port. I don't see my double layer box flexing enough to really needing another brace, but I'm contemplating a brace in the port. But I don't typically like doing that if I can avoid it. I do want some bracing kind of out in the field here because I feel like these middle subs have the potential to flex. So I like to send one brace maybe from here down just to really ensure the box is going to be strong. And what I could do is I could combine it with the port, but the port's not quite long enough. What I've done in the past is I've had a brace that comes down and the port runs into the brace, but port length isn't quite long enough for that, at least where the subs are placed. It's kind of like another debate again that you do is what do I actually want to achieve with the box? How complicated I'm going to make the design? And I mean, we could theoretically let's pretend we put a brace in the port, maybe a 3/4 inch thick piece of wood that's kind of going along it. That means I lose a little bit of my width, which might help my port ratio a little bit, but it does change what my port's looking like. So play with it again. That actually might be a good option. I might think about doing that because basically it rounds this number off nice again. Got my port area back. And I will provide some bracing. So let me draw that in real quick. I think I'll go with it. Might even make it double wide. I don't know yet. Something like that. It looks kind of good. It looks stronger. They'll ensure there's no flex. I think I'm going to go with it. I think I'm going to double it up. So let's verify with Torres what's going on. So we're going to have a lot of things we got to check over again. So I'm actually making this smaller, so it's going to be 43.5. So basically, I'm splitting this port up, but I'm still, Torres, I'm still counting it as one port. So I just kind of narrowed it off the width of those braces. I can adjust this height. The single thick worked really good. This double thick doesn't. I think I'm going to have to go with the single, because that really makes the math work out. Pretty sweet. I think that'll look fine. So I'm going to just center it here on the box. I don't know. Maybe it's not enough. And then don't worry, we'll put round rivers and stuff. It'll look alright. I think I'm going to go with it. I think they'll look cool. And definitely be some strength. So the port needs adjusted because I made it taller. I'm going to check on the comments in a second, but got a few people watching still. So hopefully you guys are still interested. Leave some comments if you want. I'll try to get to them. But I need to raise my port up a little bit, so got to go up a 1/4 inch. You guys can tell these designs get really involved. And if I wasn't doing the live feed, I'd have it done like a long time ago. I'm really fast when I'm not, having to talk about it, but figure you guys would enjoy a video on Saturday. All right, so I think that's port. Gotta check this volume again in here because I think I need to shrink it still because we have that discrepancy with Torres and the model. And we still got to add a brace, so I can't forget that. So we're at 17 or 717.25 times 45. All right, so my math says box is at 18.44 cubic foot. So we do need to shrink it by 0.44, which is fine. We can do that. But I'm going to toss a brace in here first. And I have an option of making this 45 bigger, but I typically don't want them too big. I don't like huge 45s. And I typically don't like 45s anywhere in the box unless it's kind of these elongated designs where it does help keep standing waves out of this back corner. It kind of helps guide things to the port, I find. So that's the only time I'll use a 45 usually. But yeah, let's do a cool brace. What can we do? So I do wood braces usually. Since you could like basically just build that into your box, but people also do like the metal braces. So I'll have to talk to the customer about like if he wants to do a threaded brace, maybe like 2 of them. But I think for now I'm going to design in a wood one just for the sake of having one in the design until we figure out what we want to do. But this layout's a little bit tricky. I think what I want to do, something like that. So we're going to go perpendicular to this. So I'm going to go thinking about what I want to do. I think it's going to be something like this. Give me a second to draw this. And bracing is another thing that I have trouble with because I don't like a lot of objects inside the box. You'll see guys build boxes that have like excessive crazy bracing, and it's like it partitions the box off and all this stuff, and like all that is loss, because it's just stuff for sound to get caught up on inside the box. It's just gonna bounce on it and have issues. So typically I like to avoid bracing as much as possible, but there's like that trade-off. Like if you have a really weak baffle because it's so spread out, you're going to lose more in what the baffle flex is doing than you're going to lose in like anything you're doing inside the box with a couple of objects kind of hanging out in it, kind of creating weird sound waves and turbulence and whatever they're going to do. So you can have this debate in your head, like, if I overbrace this thing, am I really ending up creating more, creating gains or actually creating losses overall? But typically, a couple little braces aren't going to do much. But I'm thinking, what about something like this? I think the rods would be better. The rod braces, like the threaded rods, but at least this is like, he could build the whole thing out of wood if he wanted to. But I'll talk to the customer and be like, hey, I think if you wanted to get some threaded rods, you would be better off. But for this video, we'll go with this. Okay, so I'm gonna set these down where they belong. All this stuff's gonna get rounded edges too. You don't want like all these square edges and boxes, including the port. But right, so there's the brace layout. Should be pretty strong. Kind of help this middle of the baffle not flex around much. And it kind of makes it look cool. It's kind of like oh, what's that in there? I don't know if I like them kind of like being right in front of this port. That's why I think the rods would be better, because it's like less of an object for air to interact with. But I mean, you're not going to get tons of air moving in here versus like what the port is. Like the port's definitely just moving air back and forth, but the box generally isn't moving as much because it's so much volume. But I mean, this is still stuff sound's gonna have to get around, but we're gonna go with it for now. And let's calc the displacement of these braces so that we know. So because I made it a group, it's gonna tell us the volume of these in square inches. So basically 53.25 times 4, because I have 4 pieces, divided by 1728. So it's only about 0.12 cubes of displacement. So if my box was at 18.44 minus 0.12, we're still a little big. So we're at 18.3, so I need to get the volume down slightly. I'm going to go back to Torres, and I'm going to basically adjust my bracing number to get me at what my math says I'm at right now, which is let's see. Net volume. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so this is where I'm at, 18.32. I can lower this height. Boom, that'll be sweet. So we're gonna lower it 1/4 inch, and that should finish the volume. And I'm gonna double check again, make sure all my math's good. Can't forget about those circles. Let's see what I say, 1/4 inch, 0.25. All right, so we're getting down 1/4 inch. Adjust my sides a little bit. I'll do it in a second. I'll do all of them in a second. I just want to verify right now where my volume's at. So we're going to do a last check here. So I'm going to go ahead and get the volume of the enclosure like I do the 2-dimensional area of this side. we're down to 705 times 45 wide. So that's going to be 18.35 cubic feet. Minus these braces, and we said the braces are 0.12 for 18.23, minus the subs, which is 1.44. We're down to 16.79, but we got to add the 1.2 cubes for the circle cutouts. And my calculator finally says I've made it to 17.999, so that's 18 cubes. And we'll check Torres. 18 cubes. Perfect. Everything's perfect, guys. Perfect design. As long as you're shooting for those exact numbers. And that's what I typically do, and I have no problems. We did a design the other day for 612s that was almost the same box, but I gained him quite a bit. So I'm going to save this real quick. All my orders here. All right. So there's my box. Sweet. Finally got that designed, and it looks great. We're going to stick our sides on. I actually got to adjust this. Let me adjust this stuff. Or make this perfect. And then I'll go back and check you guys' comments. I was trying to wrap this up. I don't know what's going on. Okay. Okay, just wrapping up, getting these pieces the right size. That way when I go do my cut sheets, everything comes out correctly. Because I'll use this to help me make cut sheets. So we want to do some of the last touches on the box. Now that the design is pretty much set, and I'm happy with it. I'm really happy with where the math came out on all the volumes. I gotta get this to go where it goes. Go there. So like what I was saying, these braces, I'll put roundovers on them. So let's look at one of these and just show you guys how I do that. So if I edit the group, I can do this little tool. It just puts a roundover on the edge. And then drag this down. And then when I do my plans, I can specify a 3/8 inch roundover on all the brace edges. So then you have a nice brace that looks like that. Getting lost. Sometimes it's tough to get inside the box in the software because it'll like get lost in there. Why can't this spin the right way? There. All right, so that would be like, that's how I would tell them to do the brace. Put some nice roundovers on it. I actually got to remember the braces need shortened to a 1/4 inch. Okay. For those of you still watching, I appreciate it. This might get boring at points, but I figured we had nothing to do. We could all work on a box together and learn some stuff. Man. All right. Out of the box. All right, so I got to do the other brace, but I'll do that later. Yeah, it's boring. I'd like to also round over this port. So I'll put, I either do a 45 because that's easy for people to cut versus roundovers because then you got to have like a router usually. But I usually specify in the plan like you could go either way. It'd be nice to have like a big giant one, but most people aren't going to have router bits that big. So I'll just kind of go with a 3/4 inch roundover. Like that. And one on the bottom. Same deal. So that'll help that kind of exit. I accept that bottom set up wrong. So in that scenario, I think sometimes you gotta figure out how to put these radiuses in on the software, like if you want them to stop in certain places. But you could like do one of these where it like stops right there. In real life, you might probably router all the way around. I don't usually draw all that stuff in the software like perfectly because I'll just specify in the plan like, hey, round over all 4 corners of the port exit. You also want to round over the inside port. Like I feel like I end up drawing too much to make this thing accurate when really it's like people for some reason don't even put the roundovers anyway. Like you'll specify it in the plans. It's like I said you got to put the roundover and you didn't even do it. So well, I put all the time into drawing every little piece. So I just put a note that'll say, you know, recommended you should round this over. It'll be something like that. So in real life, you know, like this is the cross section of your port. This little guy, what I actually do on these is I like to round them over. Here, let me get it out of the box. Let me get them out of the box. I actually like to do a double roundover if I'm doing these. It'd be something like this. And it's not, sometimes it doesn't snap either. Like you want these things to snap to the right dimension. So you have to force it with a line sometimes. All right, so then this is our double roundover. And this piece isn't really dictating the port length that much. So I actually set it back a little bit so that this roundover can work out. Oh man, I keep getting lost in the box. There. So I want to center this. Looks like that's center. And then the same thing would happen on the front. And I would actually just set it to right here. You guys get the picture, but so then when you're looking in the box, this should be lined up at the bottom of the roundover. That's kind of a nice like thing to do with your routering and make it really nice. So that's kind of how I'd set this up, you know, for the gist of it. So you guys get the picture. I'll off this live feed, I'll fine tune everything before I start making the plans to send off. But just to show you guys what 99% of the finished product is going to end up looking like. So we can wrap this up and get the questions that you guys have. This is the enclosure. And it looks awesome to me. This thing's really cool. It's going to get down. It's going to be really loud. So let me look at the comments real quick. We're getting to the end of the feed. It's been almost 2 hours on the dot, so it's probably getting close to being done. Only got a few people commenting. Looks like you guys are just talking to each other. Yeah. Okay. So nothing crazy. Got 155 at 25 at 2. Then it falls. Damn. Is that a wall or what? 6th order wall or 6th order box? It's a hell of a score. Probably a small vehicle or something, or I don't know. That's fun. My goal is 155 at the Jeep at the 312s, just a ported box. But yeah, so this enclosure should do well. This one's going to be a ground pounder. So next thing I usually do is this is an example of my plans. And I basically just find a nice angle to take a picture at. And I will export the picture and save it. And I use PowerPoint to make my slide, like all my sheets. I just do it. Seems really easy to set stuff up in PowerPoint. Insert a picture. Of the box. Alright, so this would be like the cover sheet of the plans. And we're at 18.0 cubes at 34 hertz. This design will be available on the website, by the way, like I showed you guys at the beginning of the video. I'll go over that one more time. So I got to get all the sheets set up, but this would be like the cover. This is for the Sundown U15. And the next sheet would be, this is a different design that I'm clearing out right now, but this would tell you the specs of the box, tell you the dimensions of the box, and I also tell you how many sheets of wood you're going to need. I give you a plan view showing you all the dimensions of the box. And I also do an exploded view to show you all the components of the box. Then I specify the cutouts and give dimensions of where they are. And then the cool part is we do a step-by-step build. So this would be step 1, start with the bottom of your enclosure, start with the back. And as I go through this, I talk about the pieces and tell you what size and give you a checkbox so you can check it off when you're ready. And then you put some sides on it. And then you put the 45 and all the other components. And then you finish the box. And at the end, you get a cut sheet that also has this list so that you can check all those off if you want to cut all your parts out at once off your 4x8 sheet of wood. And everything's labeled and measured out. And finally, I thank you for ordering. So that's kind of what you end up getting. And there's all links to social media. So that's an overview of kind of what you could get from me if you wanted to design. Like I said at the beginning of the video, right now I'm really backed up, probably 3 or 4 weeks out to get anything. So what's great is I've been uploading these designs to the website for the ones I've done for other people, and you can download them much cheaper. I'm building a database or catalog of different enclosures, so this is being added to every time I do a design now. So you could go in here and browse what I got and you get it cheaper, and if it works for your situation, that's great. I give some of the information on these so that you can basically be like, oh, I think my sub would work in that because my manufacturer says it would, like a box of that volume and around that tuning. And these are kind of one size fits all at this point. I mean, like this one's designed for an FI sub, but if you had a similar sub that wanted to work in this enclosure volume and tuning, then this would be a good design. And then you could check to make sure that fits your vehicle because the dimensions are right here. So I'm going to be adding to this database as we go. I'll give more information down here. And it's a download design, so like you buy it and then you can download it to a PDF and print it out. So I'll be adding constantly to this, and you'll have more and more to choose from as time goes on. So that's a cheap solution if you don't need something specifically custom. Because like I said, if you wanted to order a custom box, I'm raising the price today because the demand's been crazy. So I'm up to $45 is my base price. Right now, I'm not doing the wall designs as much. If you really want one, then you could probably email me, but I'm not selling them through the website at the moment because I have to slow down the demand. I can't keep up with all these designs. And then here's like an example of one that I did for myself. This shows the bandwidth of the box. Kind of describes what's going on. This was a really low tuned enclosure I did for DC XL10 that I have a video on my channel of it playing, and it was a really loud sub, and I basically just took measurements of the SPL and the power and made a nice chart for you guys to see an example of this enclosure design in real world. And I think what I want to do with the Jeep is I want to start testing out boxes more and more often. If I'm not doing a wall, then I can swap boxes in and out and start developing more of these charts. I've been working with Gately Audio, so that's Bobby Gately in Sacramento, California, and I want to test out a bunch of his boxes and start making charts for him of comparing his enclosures to like prefabs because he's been selling to that market. Basically, they're off-the-shelf boxes that you can buy and have shipped to you, and start helping him crunch data in real-world application, like put it in the Jeep with a sub and test it out. But yeah, some good stuff on this website. If you guys want to come check out my website, it's jeepandbass.com. We also sell DC audio, so you can get your subwoofers, recones, and amplifiers. And I'm adding to the site constantly. All these get built at DC Audio, so I'm basically like a middleman. You buy through me, all the proceeds will go to the channel. I contact DC, have them build your woofer to any specification that you chose. We can build these really custom. You can do color coding options, making the baskets colored, carbon fiber dust caps, different, all kinds of stuff. And I actually go through some of the options on this page. And not all the options are available directly on the website. You'll have to email me. But, here's the customization that can be done. Different cone options, the Mega Roll cone, the regular SPL cone, the new DC basket. So this is all good stuff for you guys. If you want to buy through me, that's always appreciated. But yeah, I think that about wraps up what I was going to do today. I'm getting kind of tired, but we're down to very few viewers anyways. So for those of you who stuck around, I appreciate it. And thanks for all the comments. If you guys have anything left, just let me know real quick as far as questions, and we're going to end the live stream and upload it to the channel so that you guys can view later on. But hopefully we get some videos going on the Jeep. I'm going to work on it tomorrow and Monday and get hopefully a lot of progress. So Ray, can I get a hold of you? Yeah, if you want to email me at jeepandbass.com, I'll respond to that. People try to get on my personal Facebook page or however, and I don't typically respond to that as often. The email is the best way because I use that to kind of sort out like what I'm doing as far as business and audio related stuff. So jeepandbass@gmail.com, and I'll get back to you. But yeah, so let's see. 4th order live stream soon. Thanks for the knowledge. I might be doing a 4th at some point. Someone wanted one, but I have to look through my orders. I don't sell them on the website. I don't sell band pass. Problem with the band pass for me is the time consumption. I can't put that much time into designing. The porteds are just simple enough that I can get them done pretty quickly. Because we were live streaming, it took 2 hours to design that box. I could design this box in 45 minutes to an hour and probably have most of the sheets done. So I can whip them out pretty quick if I'm focused. But the fourth orders and sixth orders, they get a little more tricky, but we can definitely do a video at some point. So anyway, I think I'm going to end it. Thanks for sticking around. I think the microphone volume situation's been solved. You guys who've watched long enough, it's the settings down here that I set. So again, at 15 decibels, and it seems like you guys can hear me pretty good now. So we'll do some more videos like this. If you guys want to comment on any video, any recent video about things you'd like to see, we could try to incorporate that. I'm busy as always, but I try. So anyway, we're gonna wrap this up. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, all the good stuff that you guys do. Once the video is uploaded to the channel, you can come back and watch it, and you can go browse the channel too and see stuff. But anyway, we're gonna wrap it up. See you guys